Alrighty, let me get this banner off the screen here. Alright, make sure the audio's good, all that stuff. StreamYard changes every time I look at it, I swear. Okay, that's good to go. That's good to go. Okay. Got the comments up. Siren, thank you guys very much for reposting this. So, it's been a rough couple of days for everyone, I'm sure. Or I mean, a lot of us anyway, not everybody. There's some very sick, heinous, and fucked up people that are totally okay and or condoning and or outright celebrating what happened yesterday. You guys know I do my best to stay away from the political stuff, and I'm going to stay away from it for the most part today. What it is, this is more so of an issue of humanity in this case than it is politics. I know that I've made my position on that abundantly clear. And look, I'm just one guy with a camera and a microphone and a pair of headphones that almost anybody can afford. I don't think that I'm anything special by any means. But we all, to some degree or another, have flaws. It's being aware of them and trying to better yourself is the issue. Like another thing, I don't get religious very often, but one of my biggest takeaways from Christianity and the Bible and all that, I'm not going to cite any specific verses or anything because I'll be honest, I've never read the thing cover to cover. Maybe I should. The biggest thing I took away from it is that none of us are perfect. We all suck in some way or another. And the only thing that we can do is try to be better. That's why you ask for forgiveness for your sins, not for the ability to outright prevent them in a lot of ways. That's just the way I interpret it. I could be wrong. And I posted something this morning where I said I was dreading walking onto a college campus today because I'm a full-time student right now. You know, about 16 years later than most people do it. But I remember I got there and I was mentally preparing myself to have to restrain myself because let's face it, we know how college campuses can be. And that's nothing new. Go back to the 60s and Weather Underground and all that type of stuff. And stuff like that has been rampant for a long time. I was all but thoroughly convinced I was going to go there and there was going to be anything short of there would be nothing short of a party being thrown. I get there, and maybe it's because of the weather. Maybe it's self-contained, just because I'm feeling kind of down about all this. I get there, and the mood is not what I expected. It was very somber. It was very quiet. And it was like walking through a ghost town, even though there were people there. There's been very few occasions, and I can recall them all, and I can count them on one hand, where I felt this homogenous, depressed sadness everywhere around me. So I go to my desk, and I'm thinking, and maybe it's just me. Even though the course I went to today, it's self-paced. You don't have to go to class per se. I just except to take the tests. I go because the VA has a requirement when you're using the GI Bill that you have to attend one class in person and you have to have a certain percentage of attendance to get your stipend that you use for your living expenses. I get there and the class was a little bit more empty than normal. Nobody talked. Nobody asked any questions. Nobody asked for the password to take one of the tests. Nothing. It was just dead. Everything today was just dead. Quiet, lifeless, just nobody was moving around. I don't think I heard two people speak to each other at any point while I was walking through the halls, while I was in the class, for more than 4 or 5 words at a time. And I was sitting there trying to concentrate on I'm ahead in this class. I don't have much more to do. I've only got 2 more tests to take. And I was planning on getting one of them out of the way today. And then I would just have the final left. and I just couldn't concentrate worth a damn. I'm sitting there trying to, some way or another, just make it through and have a productive day since I took the time to drive out there. I didn't go to the gym today because I've made an emphasis of going to the gym lately. I've been very, very dedicated to that, trying to get myself back in shape and, have a better life and everything like that. And I have a lot of reasons for that I may go into on the stream, because I'm just kind of bullshitting and doing this for cathartic purposes. I noticed that about 45 minutes into the class, one person left, and then not a minute later, another person left, another person left, another person left. And, we don't go to class on Fridays, but it didn't have the vibe of people just going and getting a head start on their weekend or people having somewhere else to be. It was just like everyone just wanted to go home and not be there. And I definitely kind of got that vibe myself. So I took off about 30 minutes early, because normally I'm still in class right now, or I'm still on campus because I go to the gym after class. And it's almost indescribable how just absolutely fucking upsetting everything is right now. And this isn't just the Charlie Kirk assassination. And let's not call it a murder. Murder has a specific definition. Assassination has a specific definition. This is the latter. So that's one thing. But it's not just what happened to him. It felt like, whether you wanted it to or not, what happened yesterday affected everybody, voluntarily or involuntarily. But the thing about it is, some people that I've seen saying some of this stuff that I just, it's hard to read, and it's even harder to repeat. But I saw one comment that said, well, his kids will be better growing off without a father than having a father like him. Here's what really sucks about it. I saw something like this potentially occurring a long time ago, a long time before I was on YouTube, everything. My grandmother, who I call my mom because she took that role on for me, I never met my actual mother, and I have no desire to. I remember there was one day in 2014-ish, so it's been about 10 years. And she asked me if I was ever going to have kids. And I'm like, well, I got to find the other half of the equation first, and I'm not really in a hurry to do that, because I was on active duty. I was gone all the time, and I just wasn't really interested in anything like that, to be perfectly honest. And that, as that conversation got deeper, I told her, I'm like, Mom, I don't think I really want to have kids. And I couldn't figure out why I felt that way at the time. Just for some odd reason, I was just someone who was going to be content with just having animals for the rest of my life. And honestly, I like animals more than I like people, like a fucking lot more. That's not to say that I don't care about my friends or my family or anything like that. I absolutely do. But 9 times out of 10, I'd rather just be with my fucking dog. Desiree being the exception. Like, I love spending time with her. And of course, the guys you see me on streams with and everything, I love spending time with them. But like, just generally, I prefer being around animals more than people. And what I think that I didn't realize in that moment, consciously but subconsciously, I knew it. I grew up in the 90s. The 90s was a great time to grow up. It was a really awesome time to grow up. People say, oh, you only remember it that way because you were a kid. That no, I feel bad for what these kids are growing up in now. Everything sucks. And I think the conclusion I came to was, everybody who was in the world before us, or we'll just keep it in America, I think that every generation at least saw that they could bring people into a relatively stable world that wasn't all too dissimilar from the one that they saw before. Sure, things change, trends change, clothes change, music changes, interest changes, fads change, all that type of stuff. But they at least had some sort of security and knowledge that the world that they were leaving behind for their kids was at marginally worse maybe the same, hopefully better than the one that they were leaving behind. And a lot of my friends that are my age that also chose not to have children can identify with this. We've actually been talking a lot the last 12 hours or so, because I hardly slept last night. And all of you sent me DMs and everything. Thank you very much. I don't feel like that this situation is necessarily reparable. That's what's scary. These kids now, they can't have a fraction of the good childhood I had. And I feel bad for them. I really do. Today's one of those days where I just kind of feel bad for everybody and everything in general. I'm going to try to get back to business as usual on here sometime in the next couple of days. It may be as soon as tonight. Last night I had a stream put together where I was going to talk about the prospect showcase, the roster for it. I was going to talk about some of the stuff that was circulating around Roslovic possibly coming back. There was a bunch of stuff I was going to do last night. And then I just didn't want to. And another thing about it is I had a sinking feeling the entire day yesterday. I remember yesterday I went to the gym after I'll get to y'all's comments. Thank you guys. I went to the gym and I was doing an exercise I do all the time, goblet squats. The reason I prefer goblet squats over regular squats is because I have T-Rex arms. My arms are fucking short and I'm stocky and I've got big shoulders. So like getting my hands back here, the only way I can do it is if I have one of those, the squat safety racks that you have to hold right here, then I can do them all day. But that gym doesn't have one and I'm going to buy my own eventually just so I can take it with me. So in the meantime, I just do goblet squats with a kettlebell until the weight gets too high and then I go to a weight. And I was there doing those. And then all of a sudden I got this pain in my back. And it was the same one that like I had during that tryout for the Citadel hockey team that was so bad that I couldn't keep skating. I couldn't keep my skates flat. I had to get off the ice. So I thought maybe it was a holdover of that. So I just kept like trying to work it out, stretch it and everything and all that type of shit. Just to try and get it to like where I could still get a decent workout in. So I did some calf raises that started feeling a little bit better. I jumped on the leg press. I did that for a little while. Then I did some more squats. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll call it a day. And the pain had started to subside. But the entire time I was driving home, and this is about 30 minutes before that horrible incident occurred, I like had the sinking feeling that something bad was happening. Like I was like legitimately worried. I'm like, I need to hurry up and get home. So I get home and I check on Desiree and the dogs and everything's fine. Normally when I have a moment like that where I think, okay, everything's fine, I can calm down now, that feeling didn't go away. Normally right after I get home, I try to run up and take a shower real quick before dinner so that I can just walk the dog and be done for the day. And then I can sit on here and stream, do schoolwork, whatever. And the sinking feeling just wouldn't go away. I was just sitting there on the couch. And then the way that I found out that it happened was one of the group chats I'm in, someone said it happened and then showed the video of it. And I advise you not to watch it. If you haven't seen it already, if you can avoid it, please do, if you wish to do so. And after that, the guy's remains weren't even cold. And there were people celebrating like the fucking Death Star had just blown up in fucking Star Wars. I would probably have this exact same reaction if it was someone on the other side. Like I said, I don't get into my politics, but you guys probably know which way I lean. You'd be very surprised on certain things. You really would. But the fact of the matter is, Charlie Kirk was not a violent man. I could never do his job. The patience he had with going to those campuses, because, you know, it's like this. He never threw a punch at anybody. He never raised his voice at anyone. He didn't even cuss. He was as docile as they came. And if there's evidence refuting otherwise, please show it to me. And I wasn't a Charlie Kirk guy by any means. I didn't really consume his content. Anytime I saw him, it was like in a short, or it was him talking to somebody else that I watch regularly or something like that. I knew who he was. I knew his platform. I knew generally what the ideas that he had were. Other than that, I didn't really know much about him. I knew that he had a wife and had kids. That was about it because, you know, he talked about it so much. And I don't think he necessarily really forced the idea of having children and having a wife on people. He just stated how it had greatly benefited his life. I could never do anything like he did because there were a lot of those times, a lot of the videos I saw of him was where he was having a civil discourse with somebody and their reactions were to call him a Nazi, a fascist, and all this other shit, spit on him, throw things at him. And he never responded to any of it. He never reciprocated that. Not anything that I saw with the limited visibility that I had of him. And for some reason, despite how docile he was, it cost him his life. And that's where I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around it. That's why I said the thing I said yesterday about, like, was being in the military worth it? Because people talk all the God and country stuff, and yes, that is a factor. But you know what else goes along with that? People feeling like that they have a country where they can be prosperous, where they have running water, electricity, full grocery stores, and above all, it's relatively safe. Despite all the fucked up shit we're living through right now, this is actually one of the safer times in the grand scheme of human history. People aren't getting thrown to lions and eaten in coliseums yet. But make no mistake, we are getting there. And the thing that bothers me about it is one of the things I was always told when I was growing up. As long as people can have civil discourse and there can be conflict resolution that way, and as long as people don't escalate past being able to talk about things, we'll be fine. We'll ultimately work everything out. Yesterday, I don't know if that's true anymore. I really don't. The other scary thing about it is if you look at civil wars throughout history, and I'm not saying that America's headed towards one. I hope it's not. The one in this country was kind of unique in the regard that it was two belligerents of uniformed combatants fighting each other after secession. Normally, civil wars are much more, one side is uniformed and has a government, and the other side is essentially a bunch of militiamen that fight like guerrillas. Ours was unique. But the thing about it is, in a lot of civil wars, one of the last things that happens before everything goes completely hot is public figures, prominent public figures, start getting killed. That's usually the last stop. When bullets start flying at politicians, or in the case of Charlie Kirk, activists who are very well known, that's usually the last stop before normal everyday people start throwing bullets at each other. And that's a scary fucking thought. Get to some of the comments here. Siren, thank you again for reposting this, even though I'm not really saying anything profound or anything like that. I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around everything that's going on. To you too, my friend. DMD says not wrong. Thank you. Cavery, what's up, buddy? I'm at work, but I love my hockey fam. Love you too, brother. This has been a hard thing to process. And I think the reason it's such a hard thing to process is because this is a cause and effect scenario. We've had the cause. Now we just kind of got to sit here and wonder what the effect is going to be. Now, maybe nothing will happen. I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't. There have been plenty of people on the left that said that this is bad. And for that, I thank you. Everyone thought that World War III was going to, hell, if I had $1 for every time somebody said World War III was going to start, my truck would be paid off. But after the Iran thing, everyone thought World War III was going to start. Nothing happened. Not really. Israel flew that second strike after before the ceasefire because they were like, I didn't hear no bell, which was stupid. Other reasons I don't typically get into politics other than it's divisive in nature and by default. I used to live within 30 minutes of the world epicenter of politics, and that's Washington, D.C. And you see how politics consumes some people online to the point where it's a non-theistic religion. And that goes for a lot of different people. Imagine being around people like that in real life every day, tangibly in front of you, who feel the exact same way, where it is a religion to them. And it's one that they are very fanatical about. I saw that a lot at my last job. My last job, I can't go into the specifics of what I did, but I was a government contractor. I did signals intelligence when I was in the military, and then I did something kind of similar up there. Make of that what you will. The amount of disrespect a lot of people in that line of work had for normal, everyday Americans was fucking nauseating to me. I remember during 2020 in particular, and this was the beginning of the end of me wanting to be in that area and that line of work, because at first I didn't mind it up there. It was all right. I hated the hockey team there. Everyone knows that. But I made a lot of good friends. I'm still going to go back up there once in a while and see them. I'm going to go to a game when the Canes are in town there. Maybe. I don't know. Leaving the house just doesn't sound appealing right now. Maybe I'll feel different in a few days, but right now I'm just not digging the idea. I remember in 2020 when all the lockdowns and stuff started happening, and regardless of your opinions on that, I remember a lot of the government employees, not so much the contractors, but the GSs. There were some of them that got to stay home for months with full pay and benefits the entire time. Yet they had absolutely no sympathy whatsoever for people who were not allowed to go to work, not allowed to get paid. Because without those people making money that is then taxed so that the military and people who work for the government can get paid, they still expected their checks but didn't want people to have the ability to earn their own. I heard some very scary statements in that place that I worked. The American people don't know what's best for them, one person said. Individual freedom is a bad idea. Certain people can't make their own decisions. We should be more in charge of them. But these are the same people that will preach up and down about how they're doing things to keep America safe. And they stand on a moral high ground about it, even though a lot of them don't do anything. There's a lot of people in the government, I can tell you, they don't do shit. There's someone who was billeted where I used to work. Their job was to go in and sit in on random meetings to make sure they were being conducted efficiently. That's not a real job. The person who puts your fries in the bag at Chick-fil-A has more of a real job than that. No hate to anybody who works at Chick-fil-A or in anything like that. I'm just saying that's a living at least. You're doing something. You're providing a good or a service. I forget what the official title of the person who just went in and we'll call them the meeting watcher, but that was a thing. Yet they had the audacity to say this stuff about rural Americans are idiots. For example, there was one person I heard say, and I told them, you wouldn't last 5 fucking seconds in the world they live in. You think that they're all dumb to live out there in the country like that? You got to be smart. You got to know what you're doing to survive. Maybe they're not book smart, but there's a bunch of shit that they can do that you can't. They fix their own houses. They fix their own trucks. They hunt for their own food in a lot of cases. That was one of the reasons why I decided to, like, okay, when I get the chance, I'm going to get out of here and go do something else. Now, granted, not everybody in the government's like that, but the ones that were allowed to talk about it were. If anyone ever offered up an antithetical position, like I did in a lot of those cases, I got talked to about it. I got in trouble for it. There were a couple of times that I had ideas about how to do things better, and I got told it wouldn't work. But if someone different brought them up, saying the exact same thing that I said, damn near verbatim, they were suddenly stunning, brave, and innovative. And it bothers me that the people that are within one degree of real positions of power have that mindset. How many of them, and they weren't anything special either. They were essentially on the same level I was, but they thought that they were better than everybody else in this country who didn't do the same exact job in the same exact line of work they did. And they thought that they were essentially a higher caste than them, a higher social class than them, and that they should be controlled, essentially. That was one of the scariest things about it to me. That's why I left it. I left a decently paying job. Me and my girlfriend both did, because that's where we met, was at work. Because of the mentality and the culture of it. And I guarantee you, some of the people I used to work with actively fucking cheered the moment that they found out Charlie Kirk was dead. And I thank God that I was not there that day at my old place of employment. That's the type of shit that's ran through my mind the last few hours, where I think about random shit like that. If I had been there when that occurred, as opposed to sitting in my own home down here in South Carolina. The amount of restraint I would have had to have had in that situation. The same amount of restraint I prepared myself to have at class today. Luckily, I didn't need it, because as down as everything felt today, it also felt human. People generally know that this isn't good. Some other things that bother me. A lot of the people celebrating Charlie Kirk dying, and this has potentially large implications on people that your taxpayer dollars fund to make sure that your house doesn't burn down, or that you don't die in a hospital if you can be saved. Doctors, firefighters, a few cops, a bunch of people in the military, and that really pisses me off. We're posting things championing what happened yesterday. For example, in the military, you are not allowed to attend a political protest in uniform. You're advised not to do it at all. I think officers aren't allowed to do it at all. But one thing I remember blatantly, not that I ever had the desire to go to anything like that anyway, is that it was in the UCMJ. Do not attend a political protest in uniform. Do not speak on behalf of the Department of Defense, or War as it's called now. Do not speak on behalf of the Department of the Navy. If you go there as a private citizen, don't do anything. Don't do anything that would bring discredit to the service. But the best thing to do is to just avoid it. As Viper said in that movie that I have on the wall over there, we don't make policy here, gentlemen. Civilians and elected officials do that. We are the instruments of that policy. Yes, I know that movie verbatim. The reason why it's like that is because you may have a certain degree of people in the armed forces that may not agree with something they have to do. And we trust the people in charge, regardless of what letter is behind their name, to hopefully make the decisions that are in the best interest of the country. Now, if you want to talk about something where no one is innocent in fucking that up, that's one of those things across the board. Everybody has some degree of responsibility in this. And the reason why it's like that is, so let's say I'm in a situation and there's someone maybe I don't get along with, and we have different opinions about something, be it trivial or be it serious. At the end of the day, if that guy gets shot or gets a limb blown off, I'm expected to treat and patch that wound. I'm expected to put a tourniquet on him. I'm expected to give him, a chance at living. And he's expected to do that for me. Because when stuff like that happens, all the idealism, all the, things that you think are bigger than yourself, the greater good, whatever you want to call it, all that shit goes out the window at that point. Same thing goes for doctors, firefighters, police officers. We all have to, the military and the aforementioned first responders and those who take a Hippocratic oath as well, have to be able to set those personal feelings aside in situations like that. If they don't, you're looking at a situation where someone ties a tourniquet on too loosely in the back of an ambulance because somebody had a MAGA hat on or a Biden hat on or something when they picked them up. Or if somebody has a Trump flag or a Harris flag outside of their house when a firefighter comes to put it out and he decides, you know what, I'm going to take my time getting the hose undone. Where's the fire extinguisher? Where's the fire extinguisher? I don't know where the fuck it is, because you're lackadaisical taking your time because you don't care about that person's well-being, their worldly possessions, everything they have, because you view them in a dehumanized way. If you can't put things like that aside for situations like that, and you can't put things like that aside for a situation that happened yesterday to a guy that committed no overt acts of violence, then you're in a really bad spot. That makes it an unavoidable topic at that point. Get some more comments here. Caniac Sessions proposed to stream. Thanks, AB. Colby McLam says, I appreciate all your words and agree with them. The word sensibility doesn't really exist anymore. That is true, my friend. Unfortunately, it is. Happy Canes fan, what's up? Oh, that's a cool picture of the dog with the Canes hat. And it's super disgusting thing about anyone who's mentally sane should not cheer for the loss of an innocent human being. That's the problem. They don't see him as an innocent human being. Not only him, and not only people who directly follow him, but anybody that is, let's say you have 6 issues, right? That you and someone like Charlie Kirk discusses. Down the line, issue 1, issue 2, or we'll say issue A, issue B, issue C, D, E, F. And you decide that you disagree with him on everything but one. A lot of times people will still view you and someone like Charlie Kirk through the same lens. They see you the same. There's no nuance to the thought. J.K. Rowling, anyone? Apparently, she's an alt-right extremist now. The woman who wrote fucking Harry Potter apparently is a Nazi, which is another word that doesn't mean anything anymore. You know, I would love to know what my two great uncles who were in the Glider Corps and fought in World War II, I would love to know what they think of people just loosely throwing that fucking term around. I really would love to know what they thought. Granted, I'll never get to ask them for two reasons. One, they're both obviously gone. They survived the war and came home, but they passed away when it was their time. And two, even though this applied more to my great uncle Ted, and I'll go into a little bit of a story here that'll be not much less lighthearted. I remember when we'd go up to the mountains in North Carolina, which is where most of my family's from. We'd go up there 2-3 times a year. And my grandfather gave me explicit instructions. Do not ask your great uncle Ted about the war, because he fought in the Pacific. And there might not have been a worse place on earth between 1933 and 1945 than the Pacific. I mean that wholeheartedly. You could maybe argue the Eastern Front in Europe, but as far as probably the worst fucking place on earth, the Pacific was it. But he gave me explicit instructions. You do not ask him about the war. You do not talk to him about the war. If he offers up anything voluntarily, you can sit there and listen. Do not ask him about it. And I listened. One of the things I always wanted to ask him about, and I never got to because you guys know planes. You may have heard of Gregory Boynton, or Pappy Boynton as he was more well known. He was this really famous Marine Corps ace. And I knew about him, but my great uncle actually knew him. And I always wanted to ask him about Pappy Boynton. And I never did, because I was given explicit instructions, do not talk to him about the war. So that's the other reason, if my other two great uncles were here that were in the Glider Corps that fought in France and Germany, I wouldn't ask them anything about it either, because the last standing order I got from my grandfather and my dad both was do not ask them about the war. And even if they were here, I wouldn't do it. But people throw that term around loosely, very loosely. Some people online that I saw yesterday even had the audacity to talk about how the generation in World War II would be ashamed of us for allowing fascism to come to America and all this other shit. Shut the fuck up. We have nothing in common with those people from that time frame. Nothing. They went through an extraordinary time and had to do some really bad shit. And, you know, people have said things like all death is tragic, and then there's people who offer the rebuttal, well, not Charlie Kirk. That's not tragic. He did this, this, and this. No, do you want to know why all death is tragic? Especially in regards if you're talking of a human being taking another human being's life. That stays with them. I never went to combat. 8 years in the military, and somehow I never found my way in it. Primarily because I was in a, branch that just rides around on ships all day. But one of the universal things that I've heard about it is every time that you take someone else's life, it kind of, unless you're just a murderous psychopath, it stays with you. You lose a little piece of yourself every time you do something like that. So that's why it's sad, amongst many other reasons. But they want to reference that war, and some of them even try to equate themselves to the people who fought in it on the side of the Allies. Fuck you. You have nothing in common with some 18-year-old kid who got hit in the head with an MG42 round the moment the ramp dropped on a Higgins boat. Or someone trapped in the ball turn of a B-17 trying to get out of it when his aircraft was falling out of the fucking sky. You have nothing in common with them. Neither do I. Nothing. So seeing those things really made me mad. We'll get some more comments here in a second. Brigham Young says, terminal nature of our social, cultural, and economic decline keeps me up at night. Sometimes I try not to engage with it by staying off social media and the internet. Yeah, which leads me to say that I'm getting all this out of my system now because I'm going to go back to business as usual soon. I'm going to try anyway. I'm going to do my best to just kind of be normal. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. I want to try and do a watch party tomorrow for the Prospects game. I'm going to do my best. But I won't be able to do those things tomorrow if I don't get some of this stuff out of my system now. Another reason why I'm trying to hurry up and get the website done is I want to be predominantly done with social media. I'll put stuff on the website. I'll use the X account to share links. I'll do my normal shows and uploads and shit on YouTube. And I already felt that way before yesterday happened, but now I think I'm going to lose a couple hours of sleep every night getting the website done just so I don't have to deal with that anymore. Because yesterday it was just kind of unavoidable. And I tried to not look at stuff too much yesterday, but I was just fucking glued to it. And that's nothing new with anything. Even before you had social media, look at 9/11, for example, and let's not forget that that's today. That's very important. People were glued to their TV watching that. I remember that very clearly. I remember exactly where I was when it happened. And something like that, you remember where you were when it happened. I'm sure a lot of people are going to remember where they were yesterday when they found out about it, at least. But people were glued to their TV. Every little bit of media you saw was about that. Every newspaper that came out the next day, and day after that, and day after that, and day after that, it was on the front page of every newspaper in the English-speaking world and the most of the world other than that. So what happened yesterday as far as the high visibility of everybody paying attention to it, that's nothing new. That has happened before. Same thing happened after Pearl Harbor. And someone not being able to tear themselves away from it, I don't blame them. Someone who was able to just kind of be like, I'm not going to deal with this today. I need to just not look at this. That's okay too. But me being someone who was an intelligence analyst, I can't help but I'm trained this way, and I can't get it out of my system no matter what I do. I am trained to think broadly in situations that probably don't need it. Now, whether you want to say this is a situation that needs it or not, that's up to you. But for me, I can't help but look at something like this and project all the consequences of it potentially that could happen out in my mind. I do the same thing when I'm doing streams and stuff, especially with Landfall Hour. I sit there and I run a million different scenarios in my head of how a game is going to go. And that's a cool asset to have. But at the same time, it really fucking sucks. Because when you have things that are serious yesterday, because in the grand scheme of things, a hockey game is not even remotely a discussion of importance compared to what happened yesterday. When something like that could be culturally, economically, all kinds of other words for it, impactful, that's where my mind goes. I think about what could potentially happen because of this. A happens that leads to B, and then that could lead to C or D, for example. It wasn't as simple as me feeling bad that Charlie Kirk died in front of his kids. It was going into the spaghetti chart of thoughts that I had after that. There you go, Hurricanes reference for you. I went into this spaghetti chart of thought, like, what's going to come of this? Because we've already seen what happens when enough people get pissed off about something. But yes, DMD, we've lost critical thinking. Not only have we lost critical thinking, I think we've lost, just legitimate basic human decency in a lot of ways. And I'm guilty of that too. I'm not going to pretend that I don't get aggressive at times that I shouldn't, or get pissed off at times that I shouldn't. I make a bigger deal out of things that don't really need to be made a big deal out of. I'm not going to pretend that I haven't done that. I think everyone to some degree or another has. But when you get to the point of life and death, which is the most clear, concise line that there is, there's no variables to that. You're either here or you're not. When you get to that point, that's about as clear cut as it should be. It doesn't get much more black and white than that. Someone is assassinated equals bad. Someone with a family is assassinated equals bad. Someone who did not engage in any overt acts of aggression assassinated is bad. Yet somehow people found a way to cheer for it, condone it, justify it. And the other scary thing, people out there asking for more. And like I said earlier in the show, bullets flying at public figures is the last step before normal everyday people are firing bullets at each other. To quote my favorite TV show, this has all happened before and it will happen again. Name the show in the comments if you know which one I'm talking about. That's the scary thought to me. And the reason it's so scary to me nowadays, if I was still 26, no girlfriend, no dogs, something like this, it would still be a scary thought, but it wouldn't be so scary now. Or it wouldn't be so scary then. Because I just have to take care of myself. And I'm sure that there's millions of other people who are thinking this right now. Especially when it's not just about you anymore. When it's about you and people you care about that you're within 1 degree of, that whole game changes. The consequences of something bad happening are exponential at that point. And you can't help but, or I won't say you, but I can't help but sit around and wonder, what is that like? Again, maybe nothing big will happen. The Iran bombing was supposed to be World War III. They threatened to close the Straits of Hormuz, and pretty much the entire world told them, we fucking dare you. Once in a while, the US and China are on the same page. But the motivations of the person who killed Charlie Kirk are concerning. If he acted alone or acted with someone else, which I would bet the latter, also concerning. And if I had to rank this in order of least to greatest, people saying, well, actually, and passively condoning it, people actively condoning it, people celebrating it, and people asking for more of it, from least to greatest. Those are the most concerning things for me right now on an individual level. The fact that it happens is bad. The fact that certain people have an appetite for fucking more of it is worse. So I think I will accelerate the timeline of getting the website done. Because one thing I made a point of, I've been on here actually less since I got to South Carolina, after the playoffs were over anyway. I kind of don't want to go on the internet anymore at all, but I also really love this channel, and you guys have been great supporters and everything like that, and I'm sure I'm not going to nuke this thing and walk off. It's not my way. But my approach to a lot of things is going to be a little bit more passive, to where I can just do streams. I've got a few people on the hook to write articles for the website. And then after that, I think I'll set up some sort of, like, if I can, what I want to do with the website, underneath the articles, I want to set up a comment section, and I want to have a forum there. And links to all the streams and everything like that. Or I may consider just doing all the streams on the website and maybe making an app down the line, something like that. Anything to mitigate how much I'm reliant on social media. YouTube and X are both problematic in their own ways. See, for you to use X, you kind of have to scroll. YouTube, you don't. You can just watch one particular video and move on to the next one. X is made to be doom scrolled. Kind of like Instagram is, even though I've never had Instagram. And I never will, probably, but... Bottom line is, guy who did not deserve to die was assassinated. He left behind a wife and 2 young girls. And if that wasn't sad enough, there's people that are happy about that. That kids are going to grow up without a father. All because they didn't like some of the things he said, and blame them for a lot of the perceived issues they had in their life. It's a really, really hard thing to process. You know, it's like I hear something like this happening in Middle East or Vietnam or Korea or China, you know, historically speaking, with all the various regime changes that have gone on in places like that, North Africa, whatever. I expect to hear things like that in places like that. Unfortunately, it is commonplace in a lot of countries like that. Not supposed to be that way here. America's not perfect by any means. But I will tell you this. This is as good as it gets. You will not find a better nation to live in than this one. If you don't believe me, I never went anywhere like Iraq and Afghanistan, but what I can tell you is I've been to a couple of resort islands, particularly Mauritius and Seychelles. My ship stopped there at each of them. About 4 or 5, maybe 6 square miles of those places, the resort side of them, are some of the most beautiful places you'll ever see. You go outside of that, it looks like Black Hawk Down on the rest of the fucking island. Places like that is where the system is much more unfair than here. People go work at a resort, give rich people, or tourists, I should say, because, you know, if I moved to Mauritius or Seychelles, most of us would be rich. They serve tourists drinks and food and stuff like that. and then they go back to living in what is essentially a shack. There's no way for them to get ahead there. The entire island is dependent on how well the resort does economically. There's not a whole lot of ways to move up in a place like that. America, you got a lot more options on ways to better your life and the life of those you care about. But some shit's got to change, or it ain't going to be like that here much longer. Heavy Canes fan says mental institutions really need to come back, in my opinion. Might not be a bad idea at this fucking point, buddy. Might not be a bad idea at this point at all. Looking at something here. This is the type of shit I'm talking about. This is the type of shit I'm talking about. Hold on, I'm going to show y'all something here in a second. Hold on, let's do this again. Give me a second. Thing I posted this morning. Dreading the thought of stepping on a college campus today, which, as you guys know from me talking at the beginning of the show, it actually ended up not being anything bad. I might lose my shit if someone is celebratory about the thing that happened yesterday or the thing that happened 24 hours ago. Don't blame college for your lack of courage. My lack of courage, huh? Because I didn't want a guy getting killed for no good reason to be celebrated. And I didn't want goddamn 9/11 to be celebrated. Let's look at this motherfucker's profile. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. He really got me there. This guy's just this guy's just a bastion of courage and masculinity. Oh boy. My lack of courage. My lack of courage. Okay, cool. All right, we'll go there. My lack of courage. When I was 17 years old, I had around y'all know I wanted to be a pilot. I had around a 3.0 4 or 5 GPA. Not good enough to go to the Naval Academy or anything like that. I had one more year to get my grades up, but I also did some research and I decided maybe I can, have a different career path planned in the event that that doesn't work. So what I was going to do was I was going to take a 2-pronged path to going to college and getting commissioned and doing all that stuff, getting a degree so I could fly and everything. So what I was doing was I was talking to somebody about it, and they told me about the whole applying for a Navy ROTC scholarship and all that. I'm like, all right, cool, I'll do that. Even then, my grades were kind of pushing it to be able to get into that. Now, I also formulated a 2-pronged strategy here. I was going to join the Navy enlisted wise, and that was something that apparently the board for the Naval ROTC took into consideration, was if someone was already in delayed entry. And then additionally to that, if I didn't get in any of those schools, I could still join the Navy, go the enlisted route. And they had this program called STA 21, where you can basically apply to temporarily leave active duty to go to school. You have 36 months to finish your degree, and then you commission after that. And in my case, hopefully go fly. And then I went to MEPS and I found out that I had a color vision deficiency and I couldn't do anything in aviation. That devastated me. If y'all, airplanes are the one thing I love more than hockey, other than the obvious stuff like family and friends and pets and all that. Part of the reason I still joined the military anyway, like one, I felt like I was kind of committed to that path at that point. I'd been planning on it for so long that I didn't really feel like it was a good idea to deviate from it. 2, like I said before, everyone in my family served, and I felt like that I wasn't better than them. So I felt like I had to do it. And the third one was, it was 2008, 2009 timeframe. So the anniversary of 9/11 being today. Back then, 9/11 was still very, 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 very fresh in everyone's minds. So I decided, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to get to do a job that I like, and I sure as hell didn't like my job. But I can give a few years of, my time to, in my little small part, hopefully prevent something like that from happening again. I didn't think I was going to go win some war all by myself or think I was going to be a hero or any of that shit, but I'll do my part. And when it's done, I'll go home. But apparently, I have a lack of courage because I think it's okay to I have a lack of courage because I don't want to associate with people who condone assassinations and terrorist attacks. This world is fucking backwards, dude. We're fucked. Spoiler alert. I went to school today and nothing happened. Let's see what else we got here. Aders says, hello. Hello to you too, my friend. Hope you're doing well today. Happy Canes fan says, checks out LMFA. Yeah, it does. I wonder what this individual has done with their life. Probably nothing. If I had to guess, nothing useful. I'd like to think I'm at least a productive member of society. And honestly, that's a fucking accomplishment nowadays with the way shit is. I normally don't do things like what I did, where I just put this guy on blast. The last time I did that to somebody was Cardiac Kane, and I had to do it. But this is a little bit more important than idiotic trade proposals or hip pieces on NHL players. See, that's one thing that has come of this. The perspective of what isn't important has shifted again for me. Now, how long it stays that way, I don't know. In a week, I might not be thinking about this. I mean, I doubt that though. People are going to keep asking for this shit and they're going to get what they want. And then they're going to realize it's not what they think it is. It's not Call of Duty. It's not Battlefield. You don't respawn. I never thought I would see the day that so many people were actively calling for political assassinations in America. I never thought I'd see the day that people openly condoned those assassinations, celebrated them, and also were totally okay with 9/11. There's some out there that say we deserved it. At the bottom of the towers, I believe it was, there was a, I believe that there was a daycare center in both towers where parents could drop their kids off while they went to work there. Did they deserve that? I don't think so. But thank you guys very much. This has been cathartic for me and everything. I just still don't really know how to process all this. Because this wasn't just one guy getting killed. This was one guy getting killed and a lot of people mad about it and a lot of people being okay with it. And that is a recipe for disaster. That's what's bad. See, and the other thing I find funny, if a lot of the people cheering for this, would they actually do something like that? I would hope not. I would really hope not. Hi, Joker. I know, buddy. Me too. All right, I don't really think I have much else to say about anything, primarily because I don't know what the fuck to say about any of this stuff. I really don't. But today is one of the most somber days I think I've ever experienced. I stopped in the gas station to get an energy drink, and the lady that works there, she's normally very, very jovial. Today, she was just not. I also have my other concerns about this, that if there was foreign influence, all this stuff, then we have a even bigger problem. So, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and hop off here. I think I'm going to relax for a little bit, hang out with my dog there, and get ready to have dinner here in a little while. And I might do another stream tonight. I'm going to see how I'm feeling, but don't count on it. The next one, if I don't stream tonight, it will be the prospects forecast. And what I'll do is or the prospects game. And what I'll do is I'll do the other stream I wanted to do right before that one, because that game's at 2, and then we'll flip over for the watch party. And maybe tomorrow we can try and bring a sense of relative normalcy back to the vibe here on the channel. Because like I said, I try to keep it strictly hockey and sports in general, but mostly hockey related. This all just really sucks. We live in a really, really fucked up time. Happy Canes fan says, I was trail riding yesterday when I heard the news and I had to stop. It shocked me that it happened. Yeah, it's. Like I said, Charlie Kirk was not someone I followed particularly closely. I didn't have any attachment to him or really anything in particular he said. But it's the idea that it happened at all. And even worse, that there's some people out there that are okay with it and asking for more of it. That's where it's an issue. Above all, don't go out there and do anything stupid. I know you guys won't. You're smart. But this is a pretty dangerous time we live in. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me. I'm sorry that we couldn't be talking on better terms, but I wanted to just try and get the stuff out of my system before I try to go back to business as usual. That's going to be difficult, though. All right, guys. I'll see you later.